Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio in Woodstock, Georgia, this is Fearless Formula with Sharon Klein.
Well, how about that? That was a brand new intro, which I hadn't heard before, other than I did it myself in my closet. But still, it sounds really nice here in the studio. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to Fearless Formula on Cherokee Radio X, where we talk about the ups and downs of the business world and offer words of wisdom for business success for lots of people. I'm your host, Sharon Klein, and our guests in the studio today both have 20 years professional experience in the staffing industry. Zahara, which I call you Z, Fallaw, is currently VP over the commercial staffing division of a premier Atlanta staffing and recruiting company. And Chuck Fallaw, her husband, has been a servant leader in the staffing industry also for over 20 years and has been fortunate to oversee placing nearly 150,000, which is so huge, people in some of the largest companies in the world. Welcome, Chuck and Zee, to the show.
Thanks, Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Sharon.
Glad to be here.
Listen, that's a huge number.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people.
150,000.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to work with some of the best teams, I think, in the staffing world. So obviously, directly, I placed several of those folks, but then I also have overseen teams of people that specifically work. And they've been in industries from the banking industry, where I started my career at, to all the way commercial, light industrial, staffing, logistics, supply chains, 3PLs, things like that.
So when you were in the banking industry, that's before you started doing staffing?
Gosh, that was actually my very first job in staffing was banking. I started out as a newbie. Everybody, you kind of fall into staffing. It's not something that a lot of people go out and seek. You just wake up one day, oh, I'm a recruiter, right? It's what I do for a living. But I remember I started with a gentleman out of Greer, South Carolina, and my first day he said, you need to make a placement in 90 days or I'm going to have to fire you, and you're going to work banking. And I remember thinking to myself at that time, I can barely balance my checkbook and I'm going to work banking. But you know, you sales is sales. You pick up the phone, start making the calls, and you kind of make it happen. So I figured banking out for a while, but it was quite an adventure getting into this industry.
Are the things that you learned in banking, are those the things that still help you today in your staff?
Some of them. One of the things that's interesting is you learn a lot of things you want to do, but you also learn a lot of things you want to avoid. And that, unfortunately, in the banking world, I learned a lot of that.
Just to avoid?
Yeah, well, just ways to avoid how you go about doing your business, and certain types of things that people tell you, like, hey, you should do things this way, and then you kind of, through observation, realize it's probably not the best way to do things. So
you have to find your own groove.
Yeah,
too,
and,
right?
and it's funny, if we get to it, I can give you a specific example of that. But yeah, for sure.
I like specific examples.
This is a very, very basic story, but I remember I was starting out and I was sitting next to this guy, and he was, at this time, I'm a young guy. I mean, I'm in my early 20s, and he's in his 50s, and we're doing the same job. And he's giving me a lot of advice about how I should go about doing this job. And actually, this is probably one of my biggest pieces of advice that I give people, is who you take counsel from really matters. In any case, he was like, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that, blah, blah, blah. And then for whatever reason, I started paying attention to how well he was doing, in professionally and personally, and he wasn't doing that well, right? So I learned, pay attention to who's giving you advice and actually where they're at. Can they get you to the place? Are they somewhere you want to be? And if they're not, you probably should, a little bit of a suspicious eye to the advice they're giving you.
So you're speaking to this gentleman, and you could almost see your path being the exact same if you followed his exact same advice, like in his 50s, in the same job.
Exactly. He's middle of the road in the KPIs. He's middle of the road in production.
What is KPI? I'm so sorry.
Key performance indicators. Oh. Basically, it means, what are some of the indicators within your industry that determine whether or not you're doing a good job, at least for the folks in the towers.
Yeah,
the ones
that
are
the metrics. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in the business world in such a small way that I don't have any KPI. So no, thanks for explaining to me. I should probably throw that term around a little bit. Yeah. What are your KPI? I don't know. No, don't do that. Dang. Okay.
Well, and I think in this it would be CUME, wouldn't it? CUME would be one of the KPIs, like your reach, how many times people hear your voice, or like when you're talking to advertisers, how many times do they hear the ads that are on your show?
I have no idea what those
I think
are.
it's a rule of 3 or something like that.
All right. Well, you're clearly way smarter than me in the business world. That's why I'm interviewing you. This is so great that you're here. I'm going to learn so much.
Stop.
Zee, where were you before you got involved in staffing?
I was in hospitality. Well, I worked for Marriott International. So I was a reservation agent, and then moved on to being an on-the-job trainer and trained other reservation agents, and then just fell into staffing. Like Chuck said, I answered an ad. I was younger, and I needed a job. I just moved to a new city, and I answered an ad for a bilingual receptionist and ended up being a recruiter, and then worked my way up from there. I was with that company for 15 years, and it really was a great experience. And I did everything from the bottom up. So I grew, was promoted time after time, and it was a fun job. But it's hard. It's a hard job in staffing and recruiting and just dealing with people and dealing with people problems.
I was going to say, so a certain personality type will succeed in this industry. What would you say are some of the key personality types or characteristics that just really make it a good fit?
I think that you just have to be obviously a people person.
That's the first thing I was thinking. Because you're dealing 150,000 people, Chuck. You got to talk to some people and get along with them,
Exactly. You have to be intuitive. Like, you have to understand people. You have to have that EQ, the emotional intelligence, to be able to trust your gut when you're talking to someone and seeing if they're really telling you the truth or not.
Can you
which
tell?
Is hard.
Generally speaking,
Generally speaking, I can nail it with someone.
Interesting.
When it's in the business world. When it's on my personal world,
everyone's a friend. No, you know what? That's fascinating, though. Let's just talk about that for a minute, because all business is people, and I talk about that on the show a lot. Business obviously is relationships with people. And so being able to identify someone's strengths that maybe they can't see, or their weaknesses that they don't even know about, is key, I think, in being able to see, okay, well, where will they fit the best? Or, are they a people person, or are they more an introvert? And so are there things that you kind of analyze somewhat quickly as you're chit-chatting with someone, interviewing someone?
Yeah. I actually don't conduct a typical interview when I'm interviewing someone for a job. It's more of a conversation. I'm asking them about their life. Like, why did you pick these jobs? Why did you leave these jobs? What interests you? What do you like to do on your spare time? Things like that, so that I can get an overall feel in that 30 minutes to an hour about that person. And it really is very conversational.
Which probably lets their guard down.
It does.
It's not an interview of, how can you explain this 3-month gap in your, I don't know. What do you think, Chuck?
Yeah.
No. I think that's a very good point. Personally, I like to look for dynamic personalities who are willing to put the work in, right? I don't necessarily need them to know a ton about the professional world or even staffing. I just need people that are willing to put the work in. I can teach them this business. And then I like to find something that has a little bit of an edge. I know this is probably not whatever, but I like to look for athletes, personally, athletes and people in the military world, because what we do requires a certain level of grind. You have to be able to grind it out. And I like people who are not losing for the first time as an adult, people who have played some sports, people that understand what it takes, that, hey, when I get knocked down, I got to get right back up and get back on that.
Be disciplined as
yes,
well,
because you will lose 95% of the time in almost all of your endeavors when it comes to sales or what we're doing. It's
95%.
I would say it's pretty high up there. I mean, especially when you're first starting and you're not very good at it, you are going to get told no almost every time you make an attempt, and you have to be resilient. You have to be able to get back up after that and accept that and say, that's really, heck, I mean, sometimes people aren't so nice to you, right? But it's not personal. It's just,
Is that what you tell people?
I tell people all the time.
It has nothing to do with
nothing
you.
to do with you.
It's just their situation, their reality.
Our recruiters interact with clients quite a bit, and clients can be pretty fickle from day to day, which you were talking about. We call it the roller coaster. And one of my advice, one of the things that I tell my recruiters is, don't ride it. You didn't wake up bad at your job today. You were good yesterday. You're good today. They're having a bad day. Don't own that. Now, if they give you something that's a legitimate concern. You need to address it, but they don't always say it in a nice way. And you don't need to internalize that and own it. You just need to go get back on that horse, start making those calls, start recruiting again, and try to address the issue. I think that's really important. So I'm looking for that grind, that grit, which is a word that we like to use a lot, and someone who's very, well, same word, resilient, I guess, is what I'm going for.
It's interesting. I'm thinking of myself and how I would take rejection over. I mean, I take it with voiceovers all the time because, the percentages. I mean, I think statistically, I get 1 out of every 30
Exactly.
interview. But that's a lot of auditions that are no's. And some I think I've nailed this so hard. I know I have. And then I'm not even on the short list and I'm like, don't understand it. Right. But it's interesting, the psychological toll that can take on me. Sometimes if it's been a long period where nothing good happened, it's amazing to me that as much as I love the job and being able to do it, it's like force myself to just say, it doesn't even matter. It's like looking at what I get out of just even trying. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if that translates to your industry, even 100%. Just trying.
I feel that in staffing, especially like in the type of staffing that we do, we have teams, so we're always like pushing and motivating each other, which I think helps
when you're together.
When you're together, right? Being a single, like a sole kind of independent producer, right?
Like in my booth,
it's hard
by myself.
Yeah,
no one's saying you can do it.
Exactly, it's hard. You have to get in your head. You have to like don't let those things affect you, or try to get out of that mood when you get down. But I'm always trying to motivate the team and keeping them going, because it is what it is. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs, but you know that what you do matters. Like everything that we do, we're putting people to work. We're building the lifeline of a company. You know what I mean? So we're putting those people in that role and helping the company and solving problems. And I think that's what keeps me going, 20 plus years, is that I like puzzles and I like to solve problems, and that's.
But it's a good personality fit then for you. What would not be a good personality fit for staffing in your industry? Someone that just wants to be by themselves and kind of like, I don't know, like an accountant, right? An accountant just dealing with numbers, just dealing with a computer, not really dealing with interaction with people. You're just, fixing the books. That's not necessarily the best personality type, because you do have to interact. You have customers all over the place, internal customers, external customers, coworkers. You have to deal with them, and you have to be able to deal with confrontation. You have to be able to the personalities, man, all over the place.
Work out the issues and solve problems.
I would say you can't be very timid. I mean, this industry, there's a role for pretty much all types of personalities. I mean, prior to the show, we were talking about disc profiles, and I think there's a role for everyone on that spectrum. But if you're going to be in a production role, if you're going to be client facing, you're going to have to be someone who's not very timid, because you're going to have to get into some pretty difficult conversations. I was coaching a recruiter the other day, and they were saying, this just feels so personal. What they said to me was so personal. It's like they attacked me personally. And I tend to cut through that with my recruiters and give them a coaching. And what I said to them, I was like, oh, so do you guys hang out on the weekend? And they were like, well, no. And I was like, do y'all go to dinner at night? And they're like, no. And I was like, do they know the name of your kids? And they're like, no. And I said, then how can it be personal? This isn't personal. This is business. They had a bad day. Don't internalize that. You go back to doing your job and try to provide them with the best possible candidate you can for their role, and they will get over this really quick. I promise you.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you think you've made along the way that you've learned the most from?
Wow.
I would go back to saying what I said earlier. A lot of the biggest lessons that I teach people come from my mistakes, which is who I take counsel from. True. There's been a few times in my career where I've listened to someone that I shouldn't have, didn't trust my own gut on it.
Did you feel it that you maybe were making a mistake? Or
100%. And that is another thing that I would say that I do a lot more these days. If I have a gut feeling on something, I really pay attention to it. But I will say that my gut is informed by 20 plus years of doing this. But I would say who I've taken counsel from, being stubborn from time to time, being enamored with my own ideas from time to time has cost me.
I love that you even just admit it, though. Like so many people are like, nah, I mean.
Now, you can't grow if you're not honest with who you are. I just don't see how you can because.
Amen, sir. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I would say that similar to what you're talking about, and just riding that wave. We've been doing this since I've been doing this since 2021. 2001. Wow,
It's a long time, huh?
I was thinking like it had a one in there.
Can't be 2001.
So right after 9/11 is when I started, and but riding the wave, right? Riding the highs and riding the lows will get you nowhere because you have to have that even keel personality. You can celebrate your wins, celebrate for 5 minutes, and then all right, on to the next thing. Or in a producing role, if you're selling, don't just sit on that one account that you're making big bank on, right? Because anything can happen where that account can go under, they can choose another provider, and you lose all that business, and you don't have anything working in the background. You don't have anything, to replace it.
That high is just as painful,
yes,
as a low.
Exactly.
If that's what you're holding on to. Well, where do you find inspiration that kind of keeps you going and steady? Because when I get hired for a voiceover job, I want to shout it to them. Of course I love this, but the 30 other auditions I did, I'm like, man.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what do you tell yourself in those moments where it's, even if you have a win or a loss, what kind of keeps you steady? Where do you find the inspiration for that?
Well, you have the win, right? But you have to keep it going because our business is not just transactional. It's very, it's consultative, and you have to keep the customer happy. You have to manage the account. You have to manage the employees that are at the account. So our work's not done when we make that win. When we make that sell, it's not over. You still have to prove yourself time after time, however long the contract is. And you want to keep them coming back to you for repetitive business. You want to keep that customer. You want partnerships. You don't want just a customer.
You want a relationship with them.
Do.
Yeah.
One thing I would add on that too is a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that what we do is a commodity industry, that because we're providing people, it's a commodity, like what we're providing a product, but it's not. It's a service industry. It's the service of finding that person that people need to really realize that's what staffing is. Inspiration for me personally, growing up, kind of how I grew up, I had some experiences in life that I never really wanted to experience again. So, being hungry from time to time can be a huge motivating factor for you. So early on in my career, it was I want to be able to eat. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make another 20 cold calls today in order to try to get this account. But as I've gotten past that and I've gotten way more confident in my career that I could probably do this anywhere I go, it's about my teams. I get super excited about watching other people come up, watching people that are just starting out in the industry and helping guide them through some of the challenges, some of the pitfalls. Like I had a conversation with one of my top BDMs the other day about the dangers of success. About how not being enamored again with your own ideas and your own way of doing things and how to avoid those pitfalls. And I like that I've had enough experience now that I can kind of watch someone's trajectory or watch what's going on and be able to spot an area where they may have a pitfall. And if they're open and willing to take that feedback, I love doing that. The second part professionally is strategy. There's just something about seeing a problem within a company or within a person and being able to figure out where do I, like you said earlier, like a puzzle, where do I put that puzzle piece in order to make this picture so that I can see the whole thing. That is something that I love so much, and watching it work after you put a program in place, it's exhilarating, especially whenever you've worked for a week on these different ways. And I know it seems very simple and straightforward, but it's not. There's so many moving parts in a recruiting plan alone, that you need in order to find the right person and making sure it's attracting the right people. I mean, I love that stuff. So that gets me excited.
If you're just joining us, we are interviewing Chuck and Zee Fallaw, and both of them have 20 plus years in the staffing industry. But what I really like that you just said is that it's something that could take someone down. In other words, being hungry, know, or even being a victim to their own ego.
Yeah.
Those are things that some people don't rise above. So what do you think it is about you that you do? Because seriously, some people just fall and don't get back up. They don't have resilience.
I've been humbled a lot in my life by the things around me and watching people as they've succeeded and failures and successes and feeling like even sometimes whenever you first start out and you win, you're like, did I deserve that? Right. And
how cute is that? Wait, really? I always think that when I get hired for I'm like, wait, are you serious?
I think for me, I'm just very introspective and I want to be as honest as I can with myself and people around me. First of all, I always joke around about how, I'm not smart enough to remember when I'm being dishonest, so I never want to do it. But I think I just have to be very, very honest about who I am. And personally, I think I'll tell you real quick. I was early on in my career. I felt like I had to have all the answers. Like I had to know the answer. If I was
to be prepared, you mean?
No, not prepared. Prepared is different. Prepared means that I've done my research and that I have the data in front of me to back up my ideas or to talk about their business. I'm talking about when they're asking me about a strategy or their overall business, I felt like I had to have an answer, right, for how we're going to fix this problem for you, right? But I don't. I just have to be willing to discover the answer. And so what happened a lot is I would go in and I'd start talking and say, this is how we're going to do things. And then I had this experience where I messed up really bad for a client. And we all do it. It happens where I didn't put the right program in place. And for whatever reason, that day, it was incumbent upon me to go in and sit down across from this person. I was scared. I was very young in my career, and it cost them some money. I'd made the wrong call on a hire, and they had to pay a fee, and it's a big deal. But I walked in, and to this day, I'll never forget her name was Mary. And I was talking to her, and I said, I made a mistake, and let me tell you exactly what happened. And she looked at me and said, it's okay. The fact that you came in here and you sat down and had that conversation with me puts you above everyone I've ever worked with as far as this industry goes, because most people won't do that. They'll come in here and they'll sit down, and they'll give me all these excuses for why they weren't successful. And that meeting is probably one of the most impactful meetings I've ever had, because I walked out going, I can just tell them when I mess up.
And I don't get fired, and it's not like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And they actually respected me more for it. And honestly, I ended up getting more orders out of it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing that people without experience or people that just haven't had the pitfalls don't understand, that they just have to come out and say when they make a mistake, right?
Do you see people that tap dance around it?
Yes.
100%.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
All the time.
And then you can almost lose respect in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the same. I like when people are just like, no, I totally messed up.
Yes.
Totally messed up. So sorry.
The flip is I'm also super honest with my clients when they've made mistakes, which sometimes that doesn't go over well, but it's just who I am. I have to be incredibly straightforward and honest with everyone that I work with. I just think it's the way to do business.
Yes.
What is diversity and inclusion like in the staffing industry for you all?
We work with very diverse workforces, not only internally, but externally as well. The part of the industry that I love that kind of keeps me going is the light industrial side, the commercial staffing. That's what I'm over. The reason being, it's manufacturing, it's distribution, it's putting people to work for things that we actually are purchasing and providing to everyone worldwide, right? From cell phones to refrigerators to TVs to
Everyday, very needed things.
To hot wings.
To bolts.
To hot wings.
To food.
Yes.
To
food.
everything.
Wow.
To cakes, Publix cake,
Imagine
things like
if you're
that.
not doing that.
Right.
I mean, you know what it was like during the pandemic when all of those freight
still
liners
going.
were in.
No.
It's still happening.
We were
even
still
now?
going.
Our industry grew.
Oh, your industry. Oh,
Our industry grew. Like, we were very much necessary. We were the, what do you call them? The essential.
The essentials, yeah.
We were the essential
Workers.
companies that we needed to provide for. And getting these people out to work every day is kind of like it's like going into a show on Discovery Channel, How It's Made, you know?
Yeah,
like
it
that's,
is.
I follow
that's
that
what
on
I love.
Twitter. I love, yeah. Yeah, no,
I
but
like seeing.
listen, if you don't have an appreciation for the backside of it, you really don't have an appreciation for what's right in front of you. You know, what it takes for something to come to you.
It is one of my favorite things too about our industry is that I'll walk into these different environments, these different work environments, and see how they make things. I mean, one of my early clients was some of the folks that work at the BMW plant in Greer, South Carolina, And gosh, it's like they have transformers in there. It's like these huge robots that just pick cars up and move them around. And I remember looking at like, should I even be in this? I shouldn't be here. I'm a little scared. But to address the question you asked about diversity and inclusion, I think that our industry has grown leaps and bounds since I've been in it as far as that goes. The industry has worked actively to eradicate things like code words, where they would use things like heavy lifter, light lifter, or whatever to indicate different types of people, for specific jobs. So we've worked really, really hard to eradicate that stuff. But I will say, as much as we've grown, I think we have room for improvement, and I will continue to push that in my companies for sure.
But I think that's across the board for everyone, any company. It just seems like I'll hear a little term where I'm like, oh man, no way. Even 5 years ago, you're not allowed to say certain things or you're not allowed now to say things that you could have said 5 years ago. Sure. There's just certain terms and ways to speak that I find, or even if I watch, like a sitcom or something. Do you ever see things where you're just like, what the heck did they just say?
That would be allowed here these days.
Yeah.
So Zee and I have a very specific example of that. I grew up watching movies like The Bad News Bears. I don't know if you remember that movie.
I remember
Was
that
it
movie.
Gordon? Was it Lithgow? Walter
Matthau?
Walter Matthau. That's it, exactly. And I watched that movie as a kid and thought it was great. Loved it, right? We decided we were going to put it in one day for the kids and say, hey, you guys got to watch this movie we grew up on. And right away you pick up on things as an adult that you didn't pick up on as a child, that he's an alcoholic, right?
Oh.
That he's got a really, really bad drinking problem. And as a kid, I didn't even know any of that. I just thought he was,
kind of a jerk
loopy.
or whatever.
yeah, loopy, right? And then on top of that, some of the language that they used was pretty offensive. And you're like, holy cow, I think I probably should turn this off.
Just kidding, kids.
Sorry, I didn't grow up on this. No.
Do you think it's better now? Do you think that we are too soft?
Yes, I actually would say yes. Absolutely, we are. I think it's gone too far in the other direction.
I was wondering.
We have to be adults about things. We can't coddle the entire world and protect everybody from everything because that's not reality. Like I said earlier, when I'm looking to hire someone, I'm not looking for someone who's going to experience a loss for the first time as an adult, because that's a hard thing. If you've been, again, I know this is going to be controversial, but if you've been given trophies for showing up your whole life and then you show up to a cold call and they tell you something negative about your mother, you're not going to know how to take that, right? Because, it happens. People will be pretty rude to you. So you're going to be extremely offensive. It's going to ruin your whole day. You're not going to be able to go make the next cold call. So, no, I think we've gone a little too far. I'd like to see that rubber band contract a little bit.
But I think it does. Like the pendulum swings back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
So would you say that the most satisfying part of your job is what you were talking about when you've worked a job so hard and for the client and you see someone in a position that they are just super happy and it's succeeding? Is that what's most satisfying to you?
For me, yes, but I've gotten to the point in my career where, I've had my successes as far as like landing accounts personally, like being an individual contributor. The part about my job that I love the most is just being there for my teams and helping them get to where they need to be, like helping them grow, helping them be successful salespeople or recruiters, and seeing them win and coaching them through the adversities and the challenges that they're going to be facing with, and just kind of being a sounding board for them.
The support.
The
for them.
support.
Mm-hmm.
I love being a coach, a mentor. I love it when I give advice to one of my employees and they take it and it works for them and it clicks, and then they don't have to like ask me that again. They know how to move through that.
So you can see directly the impact that your presence and advice and influence has on someone's life.
Yes.
That is very satisfying, I imagine.
It is.
What about you, Chuck?
We have a phrase, what we do matters. I really, really believe that, whether it's helping clients achieve their goals by finding them their number one resource, which is the human beings that go out and do the work. Whether it's the seeing a program like that change the fortunes of a company, or it's watching someone that I placed in a sanitation role 7 years ago become a plant manager, stuff like that just gets me so excited, because 100% when I chose to leave banking to go work in light industrial staffing, that was the reason. I wanted to find people who weren't making $500,000 a year, who really genuinely needed my help to find work. And I looked for, I didn't really even know this industry existed. I didn't know that, I knew temporary staffing existed, but I didn't really know what it was.
Right.
But I went looking for who's filling the jobs that are making at that time minimum wage, $7.50, $7.25.
Still minimum wage.
$10 an hour. Well,
Yeah.
it is still minimum wage, but
Yeah.
anytime I hear someone say that about, by the way, it's always fun when someone wants to argue with us about employment, right? Because it's what we do for a living. And you're like, well, they're still paying minimum wage. No one has paid minimum wage for any job for, 10 years? I don't think I've had anyone even close to a minimum wage job. They wouldn't.
But that's huge for you.
They
That's a
wouldn't
huge
exist. Yeah.
like feather in your cap to say.
I think it's
Well, it's
industry.
just general.
I think it's industry in
Generally
general.
speaking.
Oh, okay.
It's very rare. Like we constantly coach our clients on what they need to be as far as pay rates. You know, one of the things that I was just talking to someone about the other day is how quickly, especially in today's economy, it's supercharged. Slowing down a little bit, but it was supercharged as far as pay rates go.
Yeah.
Gwinnett County, the average was $12.25 in 2018, 2019, somewhere in that area.
2020 probably.
Maybe even going into 2020, around that, and now it's $17.50 somewhere
I
in
did
that
not
neighborhood.
know that.
So it's
That's
like
amazing.
So the line I use is if you set your pay rates 6 months ago, you're $1 and a nickel behind the market.
Yeah, we had
because
to increase them.
that's where they're at.
But when I first started in 2021, no, I'm kidding, 2001.
It's weird to go back that
It is.
far in
It
your
is.
head, isn't it?
It is.
We were paying, it's, $5.50. I think
$5.50
$5.15 was the minimum wage, and we
Wow.
literally were paying people $5.15. So it's come a long way. But the way I got started was right after 9/11. So people were very patriotic, and it was a flag company in the city that I worked
Wow,
in. So we
that's
had to put
serendipity.
people to, make those flags, and that was very, very just kind of, it just made me feel good.
I was like, probably felt like you had some momentum right there.
Yes.
Like you were on a ride.
Yes.
But that you can't contrive either. That's almost like I said, serendipity.
It was, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But as far as the wages go, we've had to be consultative to our clients and let them know that, $10 an hour, we've been paying $10 an hour for the last 20 years. You need to up your pay, especially now with inflation being at 8 and whatever percent. So they've had to come along, and there are still some companies that just can't because they can't raise their rates. So it's really scary to think like what will become of them if they can't raise their rates, if they can't get people to work, because just the labor market's just not the same.
We've been under the replacement rate for 50 years?
Yes.
Something like that as far as births for folks that are retiring. And I think again, don't quote me, this might be a couple of months old, but I think we had something like 5 million more jobs than we had people. And as the boomers continue to retire, that gap's going to increase. And it's incredibly prevalent in skills and trades, which is one of the reasons why I'm starting to see that trickle of shop classes and skill.
Yeah, like my son,
coming
he's
back
going
into
to school to
yes.
be a mechanic.
I had shop class. I mean, we made paddles because corporal punishment was allowed back then.
Oh my God! You made the paddles
Oh,
they
yeah.
used to spank
Oh,
you
yeah.
with. Holy
Oh,
cow!
yeah. Oh yeah, we for
That's
sure
so
did. We sure did.
That's so dark.
And I remember there was this one guy next to me putting holes in it so it gets more air. And I was
Oh
like, "What are
my
you doing, man?
He's like, this is the one I have at home.
You need to make that out of some really thin material so it breaks upon impact." He's over here trying to make it worse. It's like, you must be a good guy. I don't know what's going on. but yeah.
If you hear people say that people don't want to work, does that just drive you nuts? Because
It's true
people
and
say it
it's
all the
not.
time.
It's true and it's not.
Let's hear it.
It's true and it's not.
What do you mean? It's true and it's not.
Well, with technology and all of this social media, that everybody's the next, Kim Kardashian or the next influencer, that's really a lot of younger people have really been attracted to that. And so they go, like, I was talking to someone the other day actually, and she said her daughter wants to be an influencer. Like, that's what she wants to be when she grows up. And it's like, I never, as a job. And I've never even heard that before. So I think that's really exacerbated the fact that people aren't really looking.
Younger people
Looking for careers. But that's who's coming into the workforce,
Right.
Sharon. like we have people that are leaving the workforce, through retirement, baby boomers. We didn't have, like Chuck said, the birth rate has been low for the last 50 years. There's a data set that says like in 2025, we'll only have 200 countrywide, 200,000 people entering the workforce countrywide.
When you have 5 million jobs to
100%.
fill?
Yeah. So it's like,
Now.
that doesn't equate, right? So it's hard to see that, but also the fact that, automation's definitely going to be taking a lot of the lower end jobs, the entry level jobs that we've been placing people in a while. And I think over the next maybe 10 to 15 years, we'll see a lot of those jobs kind of go away. But, and the people that were in those roles probably move up and do something else. But it's just, I feel that they don't put out there that there are that many jobs available. They just, in the news, in the media, they just talk about like how there's no work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen over the last couple of years, influx of folks who come in and they do a good job for 30 to 60 days. And then they come in your office and they're like, hey, I've been here for 60 days now. It's time for a raise and a promotion, right? And you're like,
Sorry,
well,
can you imagine?
Well, no, it's common.
Wow.
And it's a real question. And if you don't address it, they will quit because they will go find somewhere else.
Their expectation is that.
Their expectation is that. So you do have that challenge with some folks, right? But then you also have customers or clients or employers who expect way too much of the employee. So in my opinion, overall, the workforce has changed. Right now, you have a lot of folks who are resistant to the change in the culture. They haven't caught up to the workforce yet. They're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to figure out a way to make the environment something that people will come and stick to. Even when I was growing up, the 50 years and a gold watch was out the door, right? It's even worse now. Was a year and a half, or we get a year and a half out of someone, we're like, that's pretty good, right? But we need to get that back to where I think that's not just, it is a problem with the folks and how they're coming up, but it's also a problem with how we're reacting to it. Mm-hmm. We have to figure out a way to make these environments more conducive to their life. We grew up saying, I have to figure out a way to organize my life and my fun time and the things that I want to do around my job. They're saying, I have to figure out a way to organize this job around my life and my happiness and my fun time. It's a completely different shift.
It is. I noticed just like in general, you have to have a happy medium. We can't cater to the people that have gotten participation trophies their whole life and they think that they can get a raise in a week. And we have to have realistic expectations when it comes to that. One of the hardest parts about our job is the fact that you don't just learn everything that you need to learn in 30, 60, 90 days. It takes years of experience because you have to experience the highs, you have to experience the lows. So when someone comes in to the organization and they see my job and they want my job, it's like, okay, yeah, you can have my job. I want you to have my job because I want to be elevated as well. However, you have to be able to understand what is going to come at you from the people that are reporting to you. You have to understand.
Only do that
through
having
experience.
Been there.
Exactly.
How long would you say? Like,
I would say a good 5 to 6 years is a good base of experience for our industry, and to understand people and understand the ins and outs and all the moving pieces that it comes with, because you're dealing with different levels of people. You're not dealing with just entry level. You're dealing with managers. You're dealing with CEOs. You're dealing with business problems. And you don't learn that coming out of college. You don't learn that, you have to have real life experience doing that.
Even how to relate to the different people that, you relate to a CEO completely different than you do someone that's underneath.
There's a skill set of being able to put yourself in someone's operating reality to be able to have that conversation. And I do think you're not good at that when you first start. You have to have, I would say, 5 to 6 years as well to be able to start really truly understand what are the motivations of the folks that I'm talking to on a daily basis. As you go up the chain, your job becomes more about managing the resources that are available to you and delegating them into the market, right? But each one of them is going to have a different motivation, a different operating reality, and you have to be able to put yourself into those shoes.
That's a skill. Do you feel like people are born with that, or is that something you can teach?
I think it's something you can teach. Okay. I do. Because it's self-evaluation and said, okay, these are my motivations based on my role. Now, if I wasn't in this role and I'm looking at what this person's role is, what are their primary functions, right? So their goals and their ideas are going to be set up around those primary functions. And if you can just take a step back and completely drop what you're looking for in that conversation and say, okay, how do I give them what they're looking for and also be able to get what I need out of this as well. That's a real skill set, and it's the art of negotiation. And
are those some of the books that you read?
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite books are the the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
5 Dysfunctions of a Team. That's a great title.
It's one of my favorite ones. It talks about radical candor and trust and how important it is. Those things are really important. Radical Candor is actually another book by Kim Scott, I think her last name is. I might have messed that up, but Radical Candor is another good book as well. Another
good book is Grit by Angela Duckworth. If you haven't read that,
I haven't.
Yeah, read it. She also has a TED Talk that she does. It was like, I think it was before the book that she wrote the book. She did the TED Talk.
That actually came out.
Yeah, and it was awesome. She's just an Chinese American, and it was crazy. She opens the book with how her father said that, she's not the smartest person, and she had to like fight against that view from her father. And then she goes and she interviews people at West Point to see how they get through.
That was really and like smart.
Who's
smart.
Who are the people that, get through that program and make it out, and why?
But I have a question for you about this. So if someone is feeling that they're not the smartest person in the room, or that they have, or they're well aware of their weaknesses, where does enough come in? Because I don't think I'm the most talented voiceover artist, but
you're phenomenal.
Of course I am. I'm sorry. Wait, this is live radio. I wish I could go back.
I think you're great at it.
I'm the most, but I just mean I'm good enough. So where does that come in? Do you ever kind of give people the notion that they don't have to be perfect? I mean, how do you work around that? Because I have a horrible perfection complex that can be paralyzing.
Yeah. I think just like one of the things that I tell people is like the most predictable thing about people is that they're unpredictable. So you cannot try to control what you cannot control. I can't control you coming into work or not coming into work when you said you were going to come into work. So just do whatever you can that is within your control. Did you make that call to make sure that they were going to show up to work? Did you call the customer to make sure that they knew that they were going to show up to work? And then did you make that call to see, or were you there to see if that person showed up to work? Like, did you do everything within your control? And if you did, then
that's enough.
Then that's enough, right?
It's just like I said earlier, you didn't wake up bad at your job today. One of the things that I do with a lot of my team is I give them the room to fail forward. I think that having because you hear people say a lot of failure is not an option. Yes, it is. It's an option. And it's an option in everything that you do, right? And getting used to that and working from it and failing forward, being able to take this experience, be honest with yourself about, evaluate it where you could have done better, and then learning something from it. Gosh, that's success to me, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that is hard, is changing that mindset. If you didn't succeed, there's probably going to be something that you can grow from that. And as long as you do that, that's not failure to me, right? That's succeeding in something. As I said earlier, I look back, and when I'm talking to BDMs or business development managers or recruiters or anyone, it's usually, hey, I've been down this path. It didn't work out very well for me. Let me tell you how to avoid that. That's a failure that I've had in my past that has led to a success today. So I never really see it through that lens. If you didn't get the voiceover job today, why not? Ask for that feedback. First of all, what would you have liked to have seen different in this? And then really take that in. Don't, some people get so personal about, well, they don't understand, this. No, don't do that.
It's funny. I heard the ad that I didn't get that I thought I was going to get because I thought I did such a great job. And I was on a short list for, and I heard it the like, I think it was last night. And so, and I recognized the script. I had rehearsed it many times. And so I was just listening and like, how different was I, and what was it that they were looking for? But it's fascinating too, how subjective it is. Someone might have heard something that I said and thought it was amazing. Let's just assume everyone does. But I'm just saying, like, it just depends on what someone's looking for. But I do love the idea of being able to compare, because you only know what you know in your own head. So to be able to look at my own self objectively and say, okay, well, I could have totally slowed it down, or I could have not put as much emotion in this because it clearly looks like they wanted someone to be more deadpan,
Self-awareness is so important in almost everything you do, and everyone has it. They just won't acknowledge it. That's the thing that I've always found is you typically know who you are, but you put up a lot of walls in front of that to protect yourself from acknowledging that you were actually responsible.
It's too painful. It's so shaming.
But that's where the gold is, in my opinion. When I feel bad about an effort I've put out, usually it's not because I failed. It's because I know I didn't do my best.
Yeah.
Right. That's what upsets me. Is not that I didn't get it. It's because I could have done a better job on that. And now I need to make sure this doesn't happen to me again.
Right.
It's kind of how I see it.
I think a lot of what we do is telling stories
100%.
about, and case studies, and telling stories to our employees, but also telling stories to our customers about, like, this is why we think we would be successful with your business, is because we've done this before. Let me show you how I can do it. After discovering what their needs are, right? After making that discovery, not just doing that diagnosis before,
But I love that, because you really are, your wisdom is saving people pain.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
Or struggle, which is kind of what the show is about. It's kind of helping people to understand how you manage your ups and downs so that they can take that wisdom for themselves and maybe learn something to prevent pain for themselves, I think. Yeah. But I do want to talk about a really fun part of your business life.
Okay.
Completely separate from your business life.
Okay.
But you are content creators that are very, very successful. And that's a whole other business, which I think about this a lot, about how it's 24/7. It's not clocking in and clocking out and you're done with your job and you get to have your drink at night and watch TV. But this is constantly needing updates and constantly being addressed, almost like a public relations person, which is what I wanted to get involved in at one point. I thought I would be great at public relations until I went to a firm and followed someone around and was like, 4 a.m, someone over in Europe has said something about your company and you're awake dealing with it. And I love sleep. So, but I was just going to say, like, that is a business. It's a different business. Can you explain a little bit what it's like and how many followers do you have?
I personally have, 44,000 followers on Instagram. It's insane. I'm sure there are a lot more that have a lot more followers, but just being not even really wanting to get into it. It wasn't something that I'd intentionally done. It was just something that naturally
grew.
Organically grew. And I love it. It's a passion of mine. So what we're speaking about is Chuck introduced me to motorcycles 6 years ago, and
we ride together.
Yes,
that's
and Sharon rides with us. And it was just something that was I just took to naturally, and I just can't let it go. I don't know.
She's addicted.
I'm addicted.
But it gets that way, I would say. And it's something that it's like one of the fun things that I get to experience when I'm with you all is when we talk about what it's like to feel the wind and what it's like to feel the road and accomplish a ride that's more challenging than some other rides. There's a joy that is difficult to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. So I appreciate being able to share that with you all.
Yeah.
There's definitely a business aspect to it. We've been able to parlay. Is that a talk? Or
parlay. I think that is like where, the way you're using it.
I'm thinking of palaver. That's a conversation. Parlay. We've been able to parlay that into being able to earn some money from it, get some sponsorships and a few other things. But so there's the business side of it, having that business acumen to where we can go to a dealership and say, if you were to work with us on this project where we're going to exchange labor and service and parts for tagging you and talking about you, and there's being able to show them how they get a return on that is something that I think that we have a leg up But what you said earlier is what I think it's ultimately about is when you're on Instagram, you're looking for a feeling of what this is like, what this person's life is like, what they're doing. And I think that's what it is. It's creating a feeling for people. You know that saying that people will never forget how you act or whatever. They always remember how you make them feel.
But it's how
Maya Angelou.
Yeah,
how
Maya
you make them feel.
That's one of the best.
That's a good one. Yeah, I forgot that was Maya Angelou.
It's a good one.
But I think that creating that feeling, that social media feeling, was very natural for us because I find that the people I follow are the people that when I'm watching them do something, they genuinely seem to be enjoying what they're doing.
You can feel that
right.
from
And
them.
they're not out there actively just trying to get people to follow them. As a matter of fact, when I get that feeling from someone, I typically don't follow. I typically don't. If I feel like all you're doing is trying to put, a quote unquote thirst trap out there to get people to follow you, I'm not interested in that. I want to see you doing something that you love. And I get inspired by that. I get inspired by the guy that makes knives out of meteors. That guy's so cool and he's so good at what he does. Or I watch someone who's building a bike from scratch and they just get so excited and their voice is trembling when they're talking about what they're doing on the bike. That stuff excites me. That's the stuff that I want to be a part of. It makes you want to get involved in that. And I think that our job is to provide that. That's, I guess, even though for us, it was just kind of like we were doing it and then people were kind of responded to it. So we just keep doing what we love and we just do more of it now.
What I get out of it is helping other people just find what they want in their bikes, or even get on a bike, right? Mm-hmm. I have a lot of females that, because I helped start the Litas Atlanta, which is our motorcycle collective that you and I are both a part of. And, watching and seeing other women just get on the bike and ride together and having those conversations about, like, I'm a petite little lady and I ride this big bike, stuff like that is really fun. But then having people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm only 5'4", and I'm like, I'm only 5'2", so you can do it too,
But it takes someone who's got that experience to be able to say, am I a good fit? And because you have that, it's really helpful. Mm-hmm. Like, think about the people that you influence to open up a whole other part of the world
but it takes
that they get to engage in.
Experience, though, right?
Yeah.
So I know for a fact that in 2016, when I first started riding, I had no advice to give anyone, I'm riding, I'm just starting out. I need to learn if I'm even good at this, which I rode a lot. So I became good, but I didn't have the confidence that I have now. And it's very parallel to what I do in my job. And I feel that my two worlds collide with the coaching and the counseling and the motivating and, making people like excited to ride or do their job.
It has been, as her husband, it has been so much fun watching her grow in confidence and then watch the zeitgeist around her grow with her within the motorcycle community. I mean, the fastest growing demographic in motorcycles is female riders. And it has been, for me, it's been so cool. Just like, because when we first started, there were a few, but most of them weren't riding like really big bikes and performance bikes and really getting there.
We're doing long rides.
We're doing huge long rides and watching her kind of grow into herself and gain that confidence as a rider and then that infectious nature. And that's really what resonated with people. I think about you is like, even though you didn't have a lot of advice to give, the look on your face when you're on a motorcycle is just like, oh my God, she looks like she's having so much fun. I want to go do it as well. So that's been fun. And then I've watched as other riders, or not even just females, there have been male riders that have reached out and been like, hey, what do you think about this bike? And watching you be able to actually give them that advice. And it's been something that's been a lot of fun to be a part of.
Yeah. I think it's important, though. I love that. And not to be misogynistic, but the fact that you are opening people's eyes to let go of the notion that there's this really gruff, leathered male group, with cigarette in their mouth. I just picture the people that they assume what riders are like. Yeah. But like, what I love is that if someone were to meet you on the street, they wouldn't ever consider you the typical rider. But I think that's what makes, to me, you so important, because you're opening the doors for anyone. You don't have to look or have an attitude of rebellion, I
Yeah.
guess. You know, a lot of people consider motorcycle riding kind of pretty rebellious, I guess.
Sure.
But it's joy. It's something that is such a lighter energy than I think typically has been focused on.
Yeah. Look at you.
What?
You're not your typical,
I'm like, what?
motorcycle rider.
All right. Yeah, me and my mom. Yeah.
Biker gang girl. Right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it too that people miss is a lot of the motorcycle community grew out of the military, and I think that people don't realize that when people were on those motorcycles, they really couldn't explain it, or maybe they didn't have the vernacular or the understanding of it back then. But it's therapy too. I mean, a lot of soldiers have relayed the thought that this helps me with my PTSD. This experience of being on this motorcycle helps me with that, and it definitely is one of the reasons why I ride. Now, I'm not from the military world, but there are things that obviously you kind of can work out when you're on a motorcycle.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it helps me is that I cannot be thinking about a million other things when I'm riding. I have to be very focused, and it keeps me immediately present, and that helps me slow down my brain because I'm constantly circular thinking, like analysis paralysis, and like what should I have done? I'm my own worst enemy.
Yeah.
But being completely present is just very important for me to almost remember who I really am and what I'm really doing. Going around a corner and seeing a mountain and cows, you're just in trees, and then all of a sudden you go around and you smell everything is so like fresh and air and it's beautiful. And all of a sudden I'm part of the earth,
Yes.
as opposed to just my brain telling me what I should have done different. Or I guess I just find it to be spiritual.
yeah, I would agree.
I would agree. It's a religion.
It's a religion. The religion of Chuck and Zee.
It's a religious feeling.
Well, I wanted to ask you last question. Do you have some words of wisdom for people who would even want to become sort of a content creator? Like, what are some of the things that you have found through experience that would be helpful to someone else?
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Find something you love doing and film it.
You told me to film myself mowing my yard because
Listen,
I'm on my tractor.
I'm telling you, find something you love that you're passionate about, film it and put it out there. I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many people that we just appreciate the fact that you put it out. I mean, I that's my biggest advice.
That is absolutely true. I think that there are a lot of things out there as far as like algorithms and people trying, I see now it's so weird just scrolling through Instagram, which is my favorite social media app. Just scrolling through there and just seeing people do the same thing over and over again, like hundreds
Different
of people.
that
Same
are doing
thing.
the same, like makeup tutorials or
No.
like a 7-second video with the same sound clip behind it.
Oh,
right?
I got you.
So as you're scrolling through, it's like, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, and eventually you're like, oh God, this is mind numbing.
Yeah.
Or if, within the industry, let's just say motorcycles, not being authentic, not being genuine, not being your true self, because you feel that if you just do what you feel like you want to do, it won't get as many likes or it just won't resonate with people. But not knowing that just that one like that you got, you've impacted someone, right? They're not just there. They watched the video, they made a comment on it, and they're excited for you. So why not just live with that?
You can give an advanced advice. She's like, I'm going to the advanced stuff. Not just how you get into it, but how the advanced. I agree. I agree.
It happens so quickly.
It does. I agree with her, and I actually think I would commend you on one thing, because this was difficult for both of us as we were going through this. As we started to get a higher profile, and people started reaching out to us, like, "Hey, we want you to represent this. We want you to represent that." And I won't name a specific name brand, but there was one that reached out to us that was a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for Z to be in a national commercial that was going to air all over the place. But it was with a brand or a product that she had never used. It was something that she hadn't done. And so it was a conversation of, gosh, this is a great opportunity for me. But I have a feeling that the people that have depended on me for advice and influence in this specific direction are going to give me oh, can I trust her anymore? Because she completely just represented something that she does not actually use or utilize or ride. So I would say if you only follow the trends, you'll only be trendy, right? It's all you'll ever be. So you have to be true to who you are and be very consistent, and don't let anyone degrade your message. Stay true to who you are. And if it picks up, great. If it doesn't, just keep doing it for yourself. That's the other thing that I would say is stop worrying about doing it for everyone else. If it's not making you happy, don't do it. Mm-hmm. So represent things that you use. Make sure that your word means something, because otherwise, once you get past the glitz and glamour of what people see, you're not going to be valuable to them.
I think it's excellent
Very great
advice.
advice.
Yeah,
Is that good?
Yeah. Oh, it's good. That's a great way to end the show. This is my longest show ever, but you all had so many really wonderful things to say. So thank you.
If I could hold the mic, I'd drop it.
Which don't drop this mic.
It's pretty heavy mic.
Well, Chuck and Zee, thank you so much for coming to the studio today. I have just so enjoyed chatting with you. I could chat more, but
yes.
I'm sure there's some people who want to live their lives out there that are done. But thank you so much, everyone out there, for listening to Fearless Formula on Business Radio X. And this is Sharon Klein reminding you that with knowledge and understanding, we can all have a fearless formula. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you.